Welcome to the ABBA League Weekly Magazine Show. The league had picked up the action after a 2-week layoff due to cup games. Budućnost and Radnički crossed swords in Podgorica. The two teams played last year's Final Four tournament. Derby game was of course in Zagreb, where the second-place Cedevita played host to the leading team of the league, Crvena Zvezda. Cibona was trying to prolong its winning streak, and last but not least, the best 5 actions of the round. We start with the news. Cibona's best player, Dario Šarić, was voted the best young European player. He was Croatia's champion with Cibona last year. In the U19 championships, he was voted the tournament's starting 5. He debuted for senior Croatian team in the Euros in Slovenia and is the ABBA League's best player at present time. After he had won the Macedonian Cup with MZT, Zoran Martic was rewarded with an extension to his contract for the next season. At the same time, MZT is faced with a handicap in the point guard position as Nikola Otašević is out for the remainder of the season. Zadar has a new playmaker. It's the 24-year-old American Mark Lyons, who was playing for the French team Roanne for the first part of the season, where he averaged 10 points per game. And Partizan also has a new player. It's the 30-year-old former Yugoslav national team player Saša Paulović, who spent the last 10 years playing in the NBA, where he changed several clubs. Solnog had one win less than its host Union Olimpija as the teams met in Ljubljana. It was the visitors who scored the first points of the game through Akos Keller, but Olimpija struck right back through Jako Vladović. This is his shot. Then a good run from the Hungarians as they ran away to a 7-2 lead. But that was followed by a good response from Olimpija as Davidas Gailius scored the next 5 points to give the team from Ljubljana its first lead of the game when it was 16-15, 18-18 after the first period. Dino Muric then opened the second quarter well as he scored the first 5 points, and Olimpija was off to a 25-18 lead. That soon grew to over 10 points as Stevenson was having a good game, but then the home team stopped scoring till the end of the half. And by the time Miljan Rakic scored 2 of his 12 altogether, Solnog had closed the gap to just 3 points. Akos Keller then rounded up that run to 11-0 and set the result of the first half. It was 32-32. It was probably very hot in Olimpija's dressing room during the break as the home team came out flying in the second half. First, a couple of 3-pointers from Sasu Salin to make it 40-34, and then when Gailius was successful, the lead was again over 10 points after a 13-2 partial. Peter Laurent then managed to reduce the deficit to 8, but Olimpija's players were relentless as they took the lead by 13 points when Nebojša Joksimovic scored. 55-45 after 30 minutes of play. The home team opened the last quarter well as it raced away to a 16-point lead after Muric scored. He finished the evening with the 11 points and 9 rebounds. The Hungarians did have organizing trouble as Willy Warren didn't feature in the second half. The home defense eased off a bit towards the end, which the visitors took advantage of. Here's Akos Keller dunking nicely to make it 66-53, but Alex Stevenson was unplayable. He managed 15 points and 7 rebounds in the end. 74-57 in the end, an 8th win of the season for the green and white and the second one over the Hungarian champion this year. A duel of freshly crowned cup champions took place in Novo Mesto as Krka hadn't yet beaten MZT in the ABBA League. The visitors were forced to play without the injured Otašević and Sinovic. Edo Muric was the first one to score for the home team. And for the guests, it was Uroš Lučić, last year's Krka player still. Jasmin Hukic then passed the ball nicely to Edo Muric, who scored to make it 8-7. Muric scored 9 out of his 13 altogether in the first period alone. The last time MZT led in this game was when Aleksandar Cvetkovic scored to make it 9-8. But then Krka pulled away with a 10-1 partial, which gave them the lead of 8 points after the first quarter. Erion Castrati made sure the crowd was happy after he rounded out Krka's counter-attack nicely, and soon Edo Muric did the same. But the visitors did stay in touch through that period. 5 minutes before the end of the half, Todor Gečevski scored his only points of the game to put MZT just 2 points behind. But then the visitors blacked out almost completely as Krka scored the next 14 points. Zvonko Bujan was the main player in that period, scoring 11 out of his 14 and set the lead of 38-22. The first half ended with 41-23 as Jakub Klobuchar scored his only basket of the game. The home team hadn't stopped there, and when Sani Bečirović scored, the gap was already 22 points after a 21-1 partial. When Sead Šehović scored for the Guests, he closed the gap to 17, but Krka replied with the next 7 points. And when Castrati scored for 3, Krka was 24 points to the good, 56-36 after 3 quarters of play. Then Matej Rojc scored for 3, and the game was all but decided as the home team flew on the wings of the home support. Luka Lapornik dunked nicely to make it 65-45, and Erion Castrati did the same to put his team as much as 27 points in front. A 9th win for Krka, and the highest one of the season as well, as the first one over the Macedonian champion. The freshly crowned Montenegrin champion played host to Radnički, who never actually won in Morača and also played without the American DJ Seeley, with whom coach Nikolic wasn't satisfied. Čedomir Vitkovac was the first one to score for Budućnost. He finished the night on 16 points, 10 of which came in the first quarter alone. On the other side, Marko Brkic played even better as he scored 2 3-pointers in a row to put the visitors 8 points in front. Radnički led 28-17 come the end of the first period. The visitors raised the bar to 12 points when the best scorer of the league, Sava Lešić, was successful, but the cap was reduced to 8 when Aleksa Popovic scored. Still, Radnički won the half by 48-37 and had by that time scored as many as 8 3-pointers as opposed to Budućnost's 1. The home crowd was expecting an early offense in the third period, but instead they got quieted by 3 consecutive 3-pointers for Radnički, and by the time Brkic scored, the visitors raced away to a 20-point lead. And this is the result of 3 periods, courtesy of Nikola Ivanovic. Budućnost then closed the gap to 8 points when Suad Šehović scored his and Budućnost's third 3-pointer. The home team was having a good run, rounded up by Vitkovac to put Budućnost just 6 points behind. It took more than 4 minutes for the Guests to get going in the last period, but they did arrest the fall, first through Dusan Mlađan and then through Marko Marinovic, eventually the game's best scorer with 24, and Radnički was again leading by 10. But Budućnost replied with a couple of 3-pointers of their own as their game came closer to just 5 points. That was just over 2 minutes before time. The gap was close to 4 points just a minute later, but the game was decided 37 seconds before the end when Marinovic was successful from the free throw line when he scored both. 85-79 in the end, only the second home defeat for Budućnost and a first away win over Budućnost for Radnički, in which it scored as many as 15 3-pointers. That was the game, and now let's get to know Sava Lešić, the league's best scorer, a little better. Ever since Radnički is playing in the ABA League, they always had a good eye in picking the team in red jerseys. Players like Alexander Chapin, Terko White and some others. This season, though, the standout player is the power forward Sava Lešić, who's the league's best scorer with a little over 17 points per game. My breakthrough as a player came this year with Radnički. Coach Nikolic gave me a lot of freedom in my play, more minutes and a bigger role. I never had such an important role in all the teams I played for in the past. Now I want to repay that trust. Sava was born in Knin and has played for both giants from Belgrade in his career, but he has made a name for him there. I wasn't playing at all in Partizan. I was a young player waiting for his chance to arrive, but it didn't, even though I believe I deserved it. Then I went to Crvena Zvezda, where there was a certain mutual satisfaction. In the first part of that season, I was even the best rebounder of the Serbian league.
U prvoj toj polusezoni sam bio najbolji skakač Srpske lige.
This year, Lesic is still very solid in that statistical department, and he's currently 6th rebounder in the league. But he did progress in other elements, as he now only trails Dario Šarić in the MVP stats. For this year's performances, he partly credits one of the Slovenian experts.
When
I played in the Ukraine, it was quite similar than in Crvena Zvezda. I played around 10 minutes per game, but I did make good headway as a player, and that is mostly due to Zoran Martic, who really taught me a lot, and I have to thank him that I'm playing that well this year. His best performance of the season came against Krka. He scored 29 points, an achievement he almost repeated in the game against his former club. Well, I enter every game with the same level of determination and stability. If I play against my former teams, I am only motivated more. But his career could have well turned the other way, but even if it did, it wouldn't be far from holding a ball. I had many offers from volleyball teams in my youth, but in the end I decided for basketball. Well, it's not hard to believe that Radnički's fans don't regret that decision. A sellout crowd turned up in the Dom Sportova hall to witness the first two placed teams of the league lock horns. Crvena Zvezda was in the middle of a 9-game unbeaten run, while Cedevita surprisingly lost the last 4 games at home, 1 in the ABA League and 3 in the Eurocup. Jaka Blažić scored the first points for the team from Belgrade, and for Cedevita it was Miro Bilan to give the home team a 5-4 lead after a well-constructed counter-attack. Then another counter-attack by the home team, rounded up nicely by Nolan Smith to make it 13-11. When Ante Dila scored for 3, Cedevita reached its highest lead thus far by 7 points. But the visitors did manage to stay in touch after the first period, which ended with 20-18. Cedevita was in front by 5 when Yusuf Nurkic scored 5 in a row, but the red and white from Belgrade weren't going away, as they finished the half 2 points in front of the hosts when Charles Jenkins scored from distance. The first 4 points of the second half were scored by Boban Marjanovic, and Zvezda was leading by 4. And then a very nice improvisation from Nolan Smith, who scored from an impossible position to equal the score. That was followed by 11 consecutive Zvezda points, and when Blažić scored for 3, the visitors were leading by 11 for the first time in the game. Still, Cedevita managed to stay in touch after 3 quarters of play, as Goran Suton made it 50-44. Zvezda was soon 10 points to the good, as Raško Katic scored, but then Cedevita cleaned up its act, scored the next 10 points and equalized the score through Alan Ray, as the game promised to go to its dramatic end. Zvezda led by 63-60 when less than 2 minutes before time, after which Nolan Smith again managed to score over Boban Marjanovic to make it 63-62. A minute before time, Tomislav Zupčić scored to put the home team into the lead, albeit a minimal one. Simonovic was only half successful from the free throw line, as he equaled the score to 64, and that was followed by a solo effort from Nolan Smith, after which Cedevita held a 2-point lead. Jenkins then tried to force it out at the other end, but his shot was blocked by Yusuf Nurkic, which paved the way for final victory for Cedevita. Alan Ray added 2 points from the free throw line and set the final result of 68-64. Cedevita now only has 1 win less than Zvezda. Igokea was still fighting to get to the Final Four tournament, and in that quest they needed a home win over the last place Zadar, who came to Laktaši without their star player Marko Šutalo, who was injured. Nemanja Gordic secured the first lead for Igokea, but then Mark Lyon, Zadar's latest acquisition, scored 2 consecutive three-pointers to give the visitors the lead by 6-2. Zadar was leading by 12-8 when Andrew Lawrence opened his account, but that was followed by a 10-2 partial by the home team, which won the first period by 18-14 when Gordic scored for 3. The run continued in the second period, and by the time Branko Jorovic scored, Igokea was in front by 12 points after a 19-3 partial. Zadar scored its only three-pointer of the period through Tony Dian to close the gap to 9 points, and come the end of the first half, the Dalmatians trailed by 7. Then again, a strong start to the period by the home team, and when Sinisa Steinberger scored for 3, they were in front by 15. Still, the visitors managed to put together a 10-0 run, after which they were only behind by 4 points when Mark Lyon scored. The visitors continued with that run well into the last quarter, and after a 22-2 partial, they even managed to take the lead by 49-47. That was followed by a flood of fouls and free throws, after which Josip Sobin finally managed to score from open play and put Zadar into a 2-point lead just 3 minutes before time. Zadar was 3 points to the good when Toni Prostran scored, but then the next 5 points was scored by the game's best scorer Nemanja Gordic, and Igokea retook the lead just over a minute and a half before the end. Then a very important three-pointer from Milan Doze just over a minute before time eventually decided the winner, as Zadar couldn't score a single point in the last 2.5 minutes of the game. So it's a third consecutive win for Igokea since the arrival of the new coach Vlada Jovanovic, and 12 altogether. With it, Igokea stays in the chase for that F4 ticket. After numerous injury problems, the reigning champion reinforced itself by bringing Sasha Pavlovic to its ranks. And with the help of Milenko Tepic and Terence Kinsey, it played host to Široki, who came to Belgrade without Jamar Young. Partizan took the first lead through Sasha Pavlovic, and Široki equaled through Ivan Buva. Pavlovic was soon proving to be a strong acquisition for the black and white, as he scored 9 points to give the home team a 13-9 lead. Široki scored 3 times for 3 in the first period, and after Bošnjak's basket, they were only trailing by a single point. Then the first lead of the game by Široki, as Jonathan Jones scored to make it 19-18, and when Ivan Buva scored his third three-pointer in as many attempts, the visitors were in front by 28-25, and then even by 31-25 when Domagoj Bošnjak scored for 3. Partizan's best player Bogdan Bogdanovic needed 8 attempts to get going, as he put it to 31-27. 32-31 after the first half, when Geoffrey Loverne scored, a minimal but well-deserved lead by the underdog nonetheless. Partizan started the second half well, scoring the first 6 points, with Sasha Pavlovic making it 37-32. Domagoj Bošnjak scored the only three-pointer of the period for the visitors to make it 45-41 after 30 minutes of play. Partizan couldn't break away though, mostly because it couldn't score for 3, Boris Dalo managing that in the 13th attempt, and the home team was leading by 54-48. 3 minutes before time, Buva scored to close the gap to just 2 points. Less than 2 minutes before the end, Dalo scored again from distance to make it 58-53. And then Domagoj Bošnjak was unlucky to miss for 3, as Bogdanovic on the other side scored what turned out to be the winning basket after a very nice individual display indeed. An alley-oop in the end to confirm a hard-won victory from Nicola Milutino, but victory nonetheless for the black and white, who stay in touch for the final four placing. Mega Visura had a hard task of beating flying Cibona, who is still fighting for the final four placement, but was deprived of games of late since it didn't do well in the Croatian Cup, while Mega almost pulled a surprise win over Crvena Zvezda in the final of the Serbian Cup. Dario Šarić was the first one to score in the game, and for the home team it was Vasilije Micic. Both teams were playing and shooting well in the first period, but Mega was able to win it by 32-25. Mega extended that run into the second period as it took the lead by 12 points after Marko Lukovic had scored. Then the team from Zagreb replied with two consecutive three-pointers, with Kus making it 37-31. Then Nikola Jokic again showed what a talent he is, as he passed very nicely indeed without looking to Nemanja Dangubic, who put it 42-33. Still, Cibona was able to get nearer till the end of the half. In its last second, Dario Šarić managed to beat the buzzer to put Cibona just a point behind. The third period was plagued with turnovers for Cibona, and Mega was able to punish that with 10 consecutive points, and when Vasilije Micic scored, their lead was 66-55. Cibona came within 7 points when Davor Kus scored for the last time in the game, but then again the next 10 points were scored by the home team as they raced away to a 17-point lead, courtesy of Nemanja Radovic, who scored 12 out of his 22 in the third period alone. 78-63 after 3 quarters of play. In the last quarter, Cibona only scored twice from open play. Both times it was Marko Jagodic Kuriđa. Here he put it to 88-74. Ratko Varda started another run for Mega just 3 minutes before the end, as Cibona surrendered itself and allowed Mega to score the last 14 points, most of which came from the players from the bench, as Pavle Relic scored 100 for the home team to the request of the home fans. 102-74 in the end, and that is the highest scoring game of the season. At the same time, the biggest defeat of the season for Cibona, who had as many as 20 turnovers and missed 12 free throws. So, an important win for Olimpija over Solnok, and Krka contributing to only the second all-Slovenian success in the league. Partizan had much trouble in beating Široki. A first win in history for Radnički in Podgorica, a big win for Mega over Cibona, and of course that derby game going to Cedevita in the end. Crvena Zvezda still leads the pack, but now has only one more win than Cedevita. Trailing closely are Partizan and Cibona. Budućnost and Igokeja still with a chance of making the final four. There's congestion in the middle of the table, with Zadar and Široki remaining at the foot of it. Our MVP of the round is Radnički's playmaker Marko Marinovic. He managed to reach the playing index of 35 in that historic Radnički win over Budućnost in Morača. He had 24 points, 5 rebounds and 12 assists in the 30 minutes he played in. The player has since received some offers from abroad, but he remains in Kragujevac till the end of the season. Time for our choice of the best 5 actions of the 20th round. At number 5, we have that tremendous no-look pass from Nikola Jokic to Nemanja Dangubic in the game of Mega Visura against Cibona. One of 2 alley-oops we have in this week's choice. This is the one from Ako Škeler in the game against Olimpija. Number 3 belongs to Krka player Erjon Kastrati, his steal and the subsequent coast-to-coast. One of the nicest actions comes from the game of Cedevita against Crvena Zvezda. Aaron Smith with a great improvisation over the tallest player of the league, Boban Marjanovic. And number 1 this week is another alley-oop. This time was passed by Jasmin Kukic and closed by Edo Muric. This is our finest action of the 20th round. So how about that pairings? We start on Saturday with Solnok against Igokea, followed by games in Skopje and Kragujevac, all leading to a big derby game on Sunday between Crvena Zvezda and Partizan. And then on Monday we close the round in Ljubljana, where Olimpija hosts Budućnost. And that's all from us today. Join us again next time. Bye-bye.